The cargo vessel Prometheus drifted through the black emptiness of space, its fusion engines burning with the controlled fury of a captive star. Captain James Mitchell stood on the bridge, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the control panel as he studied the navigation charts displayed before him. Something was wrong. Very wrong. "Captain, we're way off course," Emma Harris announced from her station. The young navigator's voice carried an edge of worry that made James's stomach tighten. "I've checked the calculations 3 times. We're not where we should be." "How far off?" James asked, though part of him didn't want to know the answer. 600 light-years from our planned route. We jumped into completely uncharted space. Before James could respond, the entire bridge erupted with warning signals. Red lights flashed across every console. The ship's computer began screaming alerts in a rapid-fire sequence that made James's pulse quicken. "Multiple contacts," shouted Robert Kane from engineering. "Dozens of them, Captain. Big ships. They're surrounding us." The main view screen flickered to life, and James felt his breath catch in his throat. Ships appeared on the display, but they were unlike anything humanity had ever built. These vessels looked organic, almost alive. Their hulls curved in impossible ways and glowed with soft bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like breathing. Compared to the boxy, utilitarian design of the Prometheus, these craft looked like sculptures from an alien art museum. "We're receiving a transmission," Emma said quietly. "Multiple languages. They're scanning our databases and learning English in real time. Captain, I think this is first contact." The screen shifted, and James found himself staring at something that was definitely not human. The being stood upright on 2 legs, which was where the similarities ended. Its skin was a deep violet color, covered in fine scales that caught the light. 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face regarded him with an expression James couldn't read. When it spoke, the words came through a synthesizer that made them understandable but slightly off. "Unknown vessel, you have entered Concordat space. You must identify yourselves immediately. Our sensors detect that you are containing a stellar fusion reaction inside your ship. This is extremely dangerous. Why would you do this with living beings aboard?" James exchanged a confused glance with Emma. "They're talking about our reactor?" "I think they don't use fusion drives," Emma whispered back, her eyes wide. James straightened his uniform and faced the alien on the screen. "I am Captain James Mitchell of the Earth vessel Prometheus. We use controlled fusion for propulsion. It's standard technology for all human ships. We mean no harm to anyone. We're simply lost and trying to find our way home." The alien's 4 eyes widened dramatically. It turned away from the screen and James could hear rapid conversation in a musical language that his translator couldn't process. When the being returned, its synthesized voice sounded almost shocked. "You routinely contain fusion reactions aboard ships with living crews? This is not a mistake or emergency procedure. It's how we travel between stars," James explained, feeling increasingly confused. "How else would we do it?" The alien didn't answer. Instead it said, "We must learn more about your species. You will be escorted to Concordat Station. Do not resist. Your ship will not be harmed if you cooperate." 2 weeks later, James stood in the largest room he had ever seen. The Concordat Council chamber was enormous, a vast space filled with beings from dozens of different worlds. Some looked vaguely humanoid. Others were crystalline structures that pulsed with inner light. Still others defied easy description. The chamber buzzed with dozens of different languages being translated in real time. The violet-scaled alien who had first contacted them, Ambassador Telina, stood before the assembled council presenting information about Earth and humanity. Holographic displays showed images of Earth's continents, oceans, and cities. "The humans evolved on what they call Earth," Telina explained to the council. "Our scientists have analyzed all available data. The classification is unanimous. Earth is a Class 12 death world." The chamber erupted in noise. Dozens of species began talking at once, their translators creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. James saw shock and disbelief on faces both alien and familiar. A being made of living crystal pulsed with amber light as it spoke. "Class 12 is impossible. No intelligent species could evolve under such conditions. Death world classifications rarely exceed Class 8. The data has been verified multiple times," Telina continued calmly. "Earth's gravity is nearly double our standard. Its atmosphere contains highly reactive oxygen that is toxic to most species here. The planet's surface temperature varies by more than 80 degrees in a single day-night cycle. The weather patterns include devastating hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods. The native life forms include predators that actively hunted early humans. An insectoid delegate leaned forward, its compound eyes glittering. How did they possibly survive? Emma stepped forward nervously. James had asked her to come as humanity's scientific representative. We adapted, she said simply. We learned to make tools and weapons. We controlled fire to keep warm and cook food. We built shelters against the weather. Our bodies evolved to handle the stress. We have dense bones, efficient oxygen processing systems, and redundant organs. Redundant organs? The crystalline being pulsed bright orange, which James had learned indicated surprise. What do you mean? We have 2 kidneys when we only need 1 to survive. 2 lungs. We can lose half our brain and still function. Our blood clots automatically to seal wounds. Our immune systems constantly fight microscopic invaders. We heal from injuries that would kill most species in this room. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Robert Kane added, as for our fusion reactors, we've used controlled nuclear reactions for over 2 centuries. First for generating electricity, then for spacecraft propulsion. It's just engineering. You balance the magnetic containment fields, manage the heat transfer, add multiple redundancy systems, and ensure the reactor can be ejected safely if something goes wrong. Just engineering? Interrupted a bird-like delegate. Do you understand that most civilizations consider fusion reactions far too dangerous for spacecraft? We use quantum drives or gravitational manipulation. The risk of catastrophic failure. There's risk in everything, Robert said firmly. We build failsafes, multiple backups, emergency systems. Yes, fusion is dangerous, but it's efficient and powerful. We needed it to reach the stars from our heavy gravity world. The council speaker, an ancient being resembling a giant salamander, finally addressed them directly. Humans of Earth, you present us with an unprecedented situation. You are both primitive in technology and remarkably resilient in biology. We must decide how to proceed. The vote was called. Council members consulted in their respective languages. James held his breath, wondering if humanity would be welcomed or quarantined from the rest of the galaxy. Then the alarm sounded. A technician rushed to Talina's side and whispered urgently. Her violet scales seemed to pale. The transmission was intercepted, Talina announced grimly. The Vrexian Empire received all our data about humanity. Who are the Vrexians? James asked. A militaristic species outside the Concordat. If they see humans as dangerous primitives with fusion weapons. Talina didn't finish the sentence. In the cold darkness of space, hundreds of light years away, Vrexian Commander Thros watched the intercepted transmission with hungry eyes. His scaled lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. Deathworlders with explosive reactors aboard every ship, he mused. They're either valuable weapons to acquire or dangerous threats to eliminate before they grow stronger. He turned to his crew. Prepare the fleet. We have a primitive species to test. 6 months had passed since humanity's first contact with the Concordat. The mining colony on Kepler 442b continued its routine work, extracting valuable minerals from the volcanic plains. 300 colonists called this harsh world home. Most were engineers and miners, people who had chosen the frontier life for adventure or profit. Among them was William Cross, a former soldier who had retired to the quieter life of managing excavation operations. William stood near the main pit, watching the massive drilling machines bite into the rocky surface. The planet's sky glowed orange from volcanic ash, and the air outside required respirators. It wasn't a pleasant world, but humans had learned to survive in worse conditions. The peaceful morning shattered when the sky suddenly filled with fire. Dozens of ships descended through the atmosphere, their hulls glowing red from atmospheric entry. They moved with military precision, forming a perfect attack pattern. William's combat instincts, dormant for 5 years, roared back to life. Everyone inside. Now, he shouted, his voice cutting through the confusion. The first plasma bolts struck the communication tower, vaporizing it in a burst of superheated gas. Screams echoed across the settlement as more shots followed, destroying equipment and buildings. Drop ships landed hard on the dusty plains, their ramps slamming down. Armored soldiers poured out, their weapons already firing. William grabbed the nearest colonist, a young woman named Jennifer Cole who worked in maintenance. Get to the mining complex. Tell everyone to grab anything that can be used as a weapon. Go. Jennifer stared at the advancing aliens, frozen in shock. They were large creatures, covered in thick scales and heavy armor. Their plasma rifles spat bolts of superheated energy that melted through metal like butter. Move. William shoved her toward the complex entrance, then turned to face the attackers. He picked up a heavy wrench from a nearby toolbox. It wasn't much, but it was something. Inside the mining complex, chaos reigned. Colonists ran in every direction, panicking. Children cried. Someone was praying loudly in a corner. William climbed onto a cargo container and fired a single shot from his old service pistol into the ceiling. The sound cut through the noise like a knife. "Listen to me," he roared. "I know you're scared. I know we're miners, not soldiers. But those things outside want to kill us or capture us. We can either lie down and die or we can fight back with everything we have. Who's with me?" Silence followed. Then Jennifer stepped forward. "Tell us what to do." Others followed. A man named David who handled explosives. A woman named Sarah who operated the heavy machinery. More and more colonists joined, their fear transforming into determination. "Right," William said quickly. "Jennifer, take a team to the workshop. Those industrial lasers we used to cut rock? Turn them into weapons. David, I need you to rig our mining charges with remote detonators. Sarah, get the construction mechs operational. Everyone else, find tools. Welding torches, pneumatic hammers, anything heavy. We're going to make these invaders regret landing here." The Vrexian troops advanced confidently through the settlement. Commander Thros watched from his command ship in orbit, pleased with the operation's progress. These humans would be easy prey. His forces had conquered 18 species using the same tactics. Overwhelming firepower, shock and awe, quick surrender. He didn't expect the industrial laser that suddenly sliced through an entire squad of his soldiers. Jennifer had mounted a rock-cutting laser on a rotating platform. The beam, designed to carve through solid stone, cut through Vrexian armor like it wasn't there. She swept it across the advancing line and soldiers fell screaming. "That's for our homes," she shouted, her hands steady on the controls despite her racing heart. The Vrexians adapted quickly, spreading out and using cover. They were professional soldiers facing civilians. This should still be easy. Then the ground beneath them exploded. David had buried mining charges along every major approach route. The explosives, normally used to break apart massive boulders, created craters that swallowed entire squads. Shrapnel from shattered rock tore through armor. The neat military advance became chaos. William led a strike team out a side entrance, using the confusion to flank the enemy. But they weren't carrying guns. Instead, they piloted construction mechs, 20-foot-tall machines designed for moving heavy equipment. Sarah operated the lead mech, swinging its massive hydraulic claw through a group of Vrexian soldiers. The aliens fired their plasma weapons, melting through some of the mech's armor, but the machines were built tough. They kept coming. "These humans are insane," a Vrexian soldier screamed into his communicator. "They're using mining equipment as weapons." Thros couldn't believe what he was seeing. His troops were trained warriors with advanced weapons. They should be overwhelming these primitives. Instead, the battle had turned into a grinding stalemate. The humans fought with a ferocity that shocked the Vrexians. They set traps in the lava tubes beneath the colony, places where sensors didn't work properly. They ambushed patrols with improvised explosives. They even fought in areas where the toxic atmosphere leaked in, using emergency respirators that only gave them minutes of air. The Vrexians needed full environmental suits in the same conditions. One soldier took a plasma bolt that burned through his shoulder. He kept fighting, one arm hanging useless, using a welding torch like a flamethrower. Another woman fought with 3 broken ribs, dragging herself to a control panel to trigger another trap. "They don't know when to quit," Thros muttered, watching the carnage. "They should be dead or surrendered by now." 3 days of brutal combat followed. The Vrexians held the outer settlement, but the mining complex remained in human hands. Every attempt to breach it resulted in heavy casualties. The humans had turned their entire facility into a fortress, using their intimate knowledge of every tunnel and chamber to maximum advantage. William coordinated the defense from the central command post, his uniform stained with blood and ash. Jennifer worked beside him, her hands shaking from exhaustion but her eyes still fierce. "How long can we hold?" she asked quietly. "As long as we have to," William answered. "Help is coming. It has to be." On the 4th day, the Vrexians suddenly withdrew to their ships and retreated to orbit. Thros had lost over 300 soldiers trying to capture a mining colony. His superiors would be furious. These humans had cost him more casualties than the last 3 conquests combined. William immediately sent an emergency transmission toward Earth, knowing it would take weeks to arrive. Kepler 442b under attack by hostile alien force. We held them off but need immediate military support. Send everyone you can. We're not letting these bastards take our home. The message eventually reached Earth's military command center. Admiral Thomas Reed watched the recording 3 times, his expression growing harder with each viewing. "Get every ship we have ready for combat," he ordered. "Arm the experimental vessels. Call up the reserves. We're going to war, and we're going to show these aliens what happens when they attack humans." In Concordat space, Ambassador Talina received an intercepted copy of the same transmission. She watched footage of humans fighting with mining equipment against professional soldiers and holding their ground. Her scales turned deep blue, the color her species displayed when experiencing profound concern. "They're mobilizing their entire fleet," she told Commander Vree. "The humans are going to war. Can they win?" Vree asked. Talina watched William Cross on the screen, wounded but unbowed, rallying his people with a wrench in one hand and a plasma torch in the other. "I don't know," she said softly. "But I pity the Vrexians for finding out." The United Earth Fleet gathered near Luna Station like a swarm of angry hornets preparing to defend their nest. 200 warships floated in formation, their hulls bristling with weapons humanity had never tested in real combat. Admiral Thomas Reed stood on the bridge of his flagship, the dreadnought Defiance, watching his fleet prepare for humanity's first interstellar war. A small vessel approached from Concordat space, requesting permission to dock. Thomas wasn't surprised. The alien coalition had been watching humanity's preparations with growing concern. He authorized the landing and met the visitors in the main briefing room. Ambassador Talina entered first, her violet scales shifting nervously. Behind her came Commander Vree, a tactical analyst from a species that hadn't fought a war in 300 years. His chitinous armor clicked softly as he moved. "Admiral Reed," Talina began carefully, "the Concordat wishes to observe your military preparations. We need to understand what kind of force humanity represents." Thomas studied them both with hard eyes. "You mean you want to judge whether we're too dangerous to let loose in the galaxy?" "We want to understand," Vree corrected. "Nothing more." "Fine. Then watch." Thomas led them through the station toward the weapons testing range. "But don't say I didn't warn you." The observation deck overlooked a massive chamber where humanity's weapons systems underwent final testing. A young weapons officer named Lieutenant Marcus Webb began the demonstration, unaware of how disturbed his guests would become. "First up, kinetic bombardment system," Marcus explained casually. "We accelerate a solid tungsten rod to 70% of light speed using electromagnetic rails. Then we just drop it on the target. No explosives, no radiation, no fancy technology. Just mass and velocity." The targeting computer displayed the impact scenario. Numbers scrolled across the screen showing energy output equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. Vree's translator struggled with his horrified chittering. "You weaponize throwing rocks? That's your advanced weapons technology?" Marcus shrugged. "Throwing rocks won humanity's first wars 50,000 years ago. We just learned to throw them faster and farther. Works pretty well." The next demonstration showed human Marines training in centrifuge chambers. The soldiers pulled maneuvers at 2.5 times Earth's gravity, their bodies straining against forces that would crush most alien species into paste. Vree watched a pilot black out momentarily from the G-forces, then wake up and continue the exercise like nothing happened. "Their organs should rupture," Vree whispered. "How are they surviving that?" "Earth's gravity is already high by galactic standards," Talina replied quietly. "They evolved to handle stress that would kill us." Thomas led them to the next bay where engineers worked on what they called defensive systems. A scientist named Dr. Helen Wright explained the technology with disturbing enthusiasm. "These are nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers," Helen said, gesturing to a missile on the test rack. "We detonate a small nuclear warhead, but channel the explosion's energy into directed coherent light beams. Each missile can engage dozens of targets simultaneously." "You call that defensive?" Talina asked weakly. "We're defending our colony," Helen replied matter-of-factly. "Defense doesn't mean passive." The final demonstration made both aliens fall silent. An engineer named Peter showed them humanity's antimatter warheads. He opened a magnetic containment chamber to reveal a tiny sphere of glowing particles suspended in a perfect vacuum. "This is antimatter," Peter explained. "When it contacts normal matter, both completely convert to energy. Einstein's equation, energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. 1 kilogram of antimatter annihilating with 1 kilogram of matter releases more energy than our largest fusion bombs. We make it using the same particle accelerators we built for physics research, and store it using the same magnetic containment technology from our fusion reactors." Vree turned to Thomas, his voice shaking. You build weapons from the same technology that powers your cities? You use the most dangerous substances in the universe for both peaceful and military purposes. Thomas met his gaze steadily. We don't have the luxury of separating them, Commander. On Earth, everything is a tool. Every tool can be a weapon if needed. Fusion heats our homes and propels our ships and destroys our enemies. Fission generates electricity and creates bombs. We learned a long time ago that the universe doesn't care about our moral categories. It only cares about physics. Marcus pulled up another display showing dozens more weapons systems. Plasma cutters modified for combat. Asteroid mining explosives repurposed as missiles. Even the fusion drives themselves could be overloaded and used as bombs. We don't have better technology than most species, Thomas continued. Our ships are slower. Our shields are weaker. Our sensors are less precise. But we learned something important on Earth. Any technology can be weaponized if you're creative enough and desperate enough. And right now we're both. Later that evening, Telina and Vree met privately in their quarters aboard the station. Both looked shaken by what they had witnessed. They've militarized concepts we only use for peaceful research, Vree said quietly. Antimatter weapons, kinetic bombardment, nuclear reactions used casually in dozens of applications. They don't have superior technology. They just make everything lethal. Telina watched through the viewport as human ships conducted combat drills. Their movements were aggressive, reckless by Concordat standards. They flew closer together than safety protocols recommended. They pulled maneuvers that risked collision. They operated their reactors at power levels that made her scales itch with anxiety. They evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day, Telina said softly. Predators hunted them. Weather killed them. Disease ravaged them. Starvation threatened them. They learned to fight back against everything. Now they're bringing that philosophy to space. Should we help them or stop them? Vree asked. The council is divided. I don't know if we could stop them, Telina admitted. But the Vrexians started this war. They attacked a civilian colony. Perhaps we should let the Deathworlders finish what the Vrexians began. Maybe the galaxy needs to remember what happens when you threaten a species that evolved fighting for survival every single day. Through the viewport, the Earth fleet began moving. 200 ships ignited their fusion drives simultaneously, creating a constellation of miniature stars. They accelerated toward Vrexian space, carrying weapons built from the same principles that powered human civilization. Thomas stood on the Bridge of Defiance, watching the stars stream past as his fleet entered faster than light travel. Beside him, his tactical officer Lieutenant Henry Shaw studied the enemy fleet dispositions. Admiral, the Vrexians have 300 ships waiting for us at Tartarus 9, Henry reported. They outnumber us, outgun us, and their technology is more advanced. Thomas smiled grimly. But they've never fought humans before. They don't know what we're capable of. They think technology wins wars. He looked at his crew, men and women who had trained in conditions that would kill most aliens. They're about to learn that wars are won by whoever wants victory more. And nobody wants victory more than someone defending their home. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Tartarus system. Ahead of them, the Vrexian armada waited in perfect battle formation. All ships, Thomas broadcast. Initiate Hellfire Protocol. Show them what Deathworlders do to bullies. The human fleet charged forward, fusion drives burning like the fires of hell itself, ready to bring humanity's brutal lessons in survival to an unprepared galaxy. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Tartarus 9 system, and immediately every sensor screamed warnings. The Vrexian armada waited in perfect formation, 300 warships arranged in a tactical display that would make any military academy proud. Their vessels gleamed in the starlight, larger and more advanced than anything humanity had built. Admiral Thomas Reed stood calmly on the Bridge of Defiance, studying the enemy positions. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Henry Shaw, looked pale as he read the sensor data. Admiral, they have us beaten in every category, Henry said quietly. More ships, bigger guns, better shields, faster engines. The computer gives us a 3% chance of victory in conventional engagement. Thomas smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Good thing we're not fighting conventionally. Signal all ships. Initiate Hellfire Protocol. Across the fleet, human crews received the order. Some made final checks on their equipment. Others said quick prayers. All of them knew what was coming. The Vrexians opened fire first, unleashing a wave of plasma bolts and particle beams that lit up space like a deadly light show. Human ships took hits, their armor glowing red and peeling away under the onslaught. 3 frigates exploded in the first 30 seconds. The Vrexian commander Thros watched with satisfaction from his flagship. "They're already breaking apart," he told his crew. "These primitives thought they could challenge the Empire with their fusion bombs. Pathetic." Then the humans did something no sane species would attempt. The frigate Valiant suddenly accelerated directly toward a Vrexian heavy cruiser, moving far faster than safety protocols allowed. Its fusion reactor readings spiked into the red zone. Thros frowned, confused by the maneuver. "That ship's reactor is going critical," his sensor officer reported. "They're having a containment failure. Pull back our ships from that sector," Thros ordered. But it was too late. At the last moment, escape pods erupted from Valiant like seeds from a bursting fruit. The crew evacuated while an artificial intelligence took control of the ship. The frigate slammed into the Vrexian cruiser and its fusion reactor released all its contained energy at once. A miniature sun bloomed in space. The temperature at the impact point briefly matched the core of a star. The Vrexian cruiser and 2 nearby destroyers simply ceased to exist, vaporized instantly. The shockwave damaged a dozen more ships. "Hellfire 1 successful," Henry reported calmly. "Hellfire 2 and 3 engaging." Thros watched in horror as 2 more human ships repeated the tactic. "They're using their ships as bombs. What kind of insane species does this?" "The crews are escaping first, Commander," an officer reported. "The ships are automated for the final approach." "They're turning their own reactors into weapons," Thros whispered. "By the ancestors, what are we fighting?" The battle descended into chaos. Human tactics violated every principle of civilized warfare that the Vrexians knew. Small drones packed with antimatter breached shields through sheer numbers, sacrificing hundreds to get just one through. Human fighters pulled 8 gravity turns that should have killed their pilots, but somehow the Deathworlders survived and kept fighting. Boarding pods were launched across hard vacuum, something the Vrexians considered suicidal. On the Vrexian flagship, alarms suddenly blared. "Hull breach. Section 7. Boarders." Thros pulled up security footage and felt ice run through his veins. Human Marines moved through the depressurized sections wearing suits so thin they seemed like clothes rather than armor. They carried weapons and moved with purpose despite conditions that should have killed them instantly. Leading the boarding party was Captain William Cross, the same man who had defended Kepler 442b. He took a plasma bolt to his shoulder that burned through his suit. The wound should have been fatal. Instead, emergency foam sealed the breach and William kept advancing, firing his rifle one-handed while his wounded arm hung useless. "Command, this is boarding Team Alpha," William's voice crackled over the radio. "We've secured the reactor access corridor. Planting charges now." A Vrexian soldier screamed something in his own language and charged at William. The human captain didn't retreat. He stepped forward and struck the alien with his rifle, using it like a club. The impact broke the rifle but also broke the Vrexian's helmet. William grabbed a fallen plasma pistol and kept moving. "These humans don't know when they're dead," a Vrexian soldier shouted before William's team silenced him. The tide of battle turned when Defiance targeted the Vrexian flagship's main reactor. Thomas watched the countdown on his screen, his finger hovering over the firing button. "Kinetic penetrator loaded and ready, Admiral," the weapons officer reported. "Fire," Thomas said simply. The tungsten rod launched from Defiance at 70% of light speed. It crossed the distance between ships in milliseconds. Vrexian shields tried to stop it but the sheer kinetic energy overwhelmed them. The rod punched through armor like tissue paper and struck the flagship's reactor core. The explosion was spectacular. A sphere of plasma expanded from the impact point, consuming the entire ship. Thros had just enough time to reach an escape pod, watching through the viewport as his mighty flagship disintegrated around him. Across the battlefield, Vrexian ships faltered. Their command structure was destroyed. Half their fleet was gone or disabled. The human fleet had lost 70 vessels, but they held the field and showed no signs of stopping. Thomas broadcast on all frequencies, his voice cold and hard. "Vrexian forces, this is Admiral Thomas Reed of the United Earth Fleet. Your commander is dead. Your flagship is destroyed. Surrender immediately or we will destroy every single one of your ships. We didn't start this war but we will finish it. Choose now." The Vrexian ships began shutting down their weapons. Their vice admiral, a younger officer who had watched the slaughter from a destroyer, made the only logical choice. "Human fleet, we surrender. All Vrexian vessels, cease fire and power down weapons. It's over." The battle ended but the cost was brutal. Thomas watched casualty reports scroll across his screen. 20,000 dead. 15,000 wounded. Dozens of ships crippled or destroyed. Jennifer Cole, now serving as a combat engineer aboard Defiance, approached the Admiral. Her uniform was stained with coolant fluid from repairing damaged systems during the battle. "Admiral, we won," she said quietly. "We survived," Thomas corrected. "There's a difference." He looked at sensor data showing Vrexian fleet movements across their empire. "And it's not over. Intelligence reports the Vrexians are mobilizing everything they have. The Emperor himself is preparing a counterattack." "Where?" Jennifer asked. Thomas looked at the tactical display, at the blue dot representing humanity's homeworld. "Earth. They're going to strike at our home directly, trying to break our will to fight." Henry Shaw stepped forward. "Sir, if they bring their full fleet against Earth, then we meet them there," Thomas said firmly. "Send word to all surviving ships. We return to Sol System immediately. And activate the Solar Array Project. If the Vrexians want to bring hellfire to our home, we'll show them what a real star can do." In his escape pod drifting in space, Commander Thross transmitted one final message to the Vrexian Emperor. "The humans fight like demons from the old stories. They turn everything into weapons. They don't fear death. They crash ships into us, Emperor. Their own ships. On purpose. If you attack Earth, you'll face worse. Please, Your Majesty, make peace while we still can." The Emperor's response was immediate and furious. "Coward. The Grand Fleet launches in 3 days. We will burn Earth and show the galaxy what happens to species who defy us." Thross closed his eyes and waited for rescue, knowing he had just witnessed the beginning of something terrible. 3 weeks after the battle at Tartarus 9, the Vrexian Grand Fleet entered the Sol System like an invading swarm of locusts. 600 warships, the full military might of their empire, moved in perfect formation toward the inner planets. Emperor Carvex commanded personally from the super dreadnought Dominion, a vessel so massive it had its own artificial gravity and carried enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. "Ignore the outer colonies," Carvex ordered from his command throne. "Proceed directly to Earth. We will burn their homeworld and broadcast it across the galaxy. Let every species see what happens when primitives challenge the Empire." The fleet accelerated past Mars, past the asteroid belt, driving toward the blue jewel of Earth hanging in the darkness. Carvex expected desperate resistance, perhaps even brave last stands. What he found instead looked almost pathetic. Only 100 human warships formed a defensive line, battered survivors from Tartarus 9 joined by orbital defense platforms. Against 600 ships, it was suicide. "They have no chance," Carvex said with satisfaction. "Begin the attack." Then space rippled and tore as 200 new ships emerged from faster-than-light jumps. But these weren't human vessels. They bore the symbols of the Concordat, dozens of different species united under one banner. Admiral Thomas Reed stood on the bridge of Defiance at Luna Station, watching the Concordat fleet take positions alongside his forces. Ambassador Telina appeared on his communication screen, her violet scales shimmering with determination. "The Concordat Council has voted," Telina announced. "We're intervening on humanity's behalf. The Vrexian Empire has been expanding aggressively for decades, testing our resolve. We draw the line here at Earth." Thomas felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "Ambassador, why help us? We're new to the galaxy. We have nothing to offer you." Commander Vree appeared beside Telina on the screen. "You have something very valuable, Admiral. You reminded the galaxy that peace is not weakness. That sometimes civilization must be defended with strength. We've been watching how your species fights. Your determination, your refusal to surrender even when logic says you should. The galaxy needs that spirit. Also," Telina added quietly, "we've grown fond of you difficult, stubborn Deathworlders." Carvex stared at the sensor readings with growing rage. 400 ships now faced him instead of 100. His numerical advantage was gone. But he had not brought the entire Imperial fleet across the galaxy to retreat in shame. "All ships, attack formation," he roared. "We outnumber them still. We have the strongest shields, the most powerful weapons. We will crush them through sheer force. For the Empire." The two fleets collided in the space between Earth and Luna. Plasma met energy shields. Kinetic rounds hammered against armor. Missiles and torpedoes crossed the void by the thousands. Ships died on both sides, explosions blooming like deadly flowers in the darkness. The battle raged for hours. Human ships used their brutal tactics, turning damaged vessels into bombs and launching desperate boarding actions. Concordat forces employed sophisticated energy weapons and coordinated fleet maneuvers. The Vrexians fought with the discipline of professional soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds. Thomas watched the tactical display, noting how the battle was grinding toward a stalemate. Both sides were taking heavy casualties, but Carvex's flagship Dominion remained untouched at the center of the Vrexian formation, directing the battle like a conductor leading an orchestra of destruction. "We need to take out that flagship," Henry Shaw said urgently. "As long as Carvex lives, they won't surrender." Thomas nodded slowly. "Agreed. And we have just the weapon for it." He opened a channel to Earth's surface. "Solar Control, this is Admiral Reed. Status on the array?" A technician's voice responded, tense with anticipation. "Array is fully charged and ready, Admiral. All 300 satellites are synchronized. We're ready to fire on your command." Thomas took a deep breath. Humanity had spent 18 months building this system in secret, using the same mirrors and lenses developed for solar power collection. But instead of generating electricity, they turned the sun itself into a weapon. It was either brilliance or madness, and Thomas was about to find out which. "Target the Dominion," Thomas ordered. "Fire." Around the sun, 300 orbital satellites activated simultaneously. Each one was the size of a small building, covered in reflective panels that could survive the sun's radiation. They rotated in perfect coordination, focusing solar energy into a single coherent beam. The light of a star, concentrated and directed across 93 million miles of space. The beam struck Dominion's shields and didn't stop. The shields, designed to deflect weapons, had no defense against the raw power of a sun focused to a point. They overloaded in seconds. The beam touched the flagship's armor and the metal simply vaporized. It punched through deck after deck, melting everything in its path. Emperor Carvex had one moment of understanding before the beam reached the ship's main reactor. His last thought was that he had underestimated these primitive Deathworlders. Then the reactor exploded with the force of a small star, and Carvex and his mighty flagship became nothing but expanding plasma. The Vrexian fleet froze, their command structure obliterated in an instant. Every ship received the same sensor data showing their emperor's death. Showing a weapon that could reach across the solar system with the power of the sun itself. Thomas broadcast on all frequencies. "Vrexian forces, your emperor is dead. Your flagship is destroyed. You are deep in our home system and we live next to a star. We can do this all day. Surrender now or share Carvex's fate. Choose quickly." The Vrexian Vice Admiral, watching from his bridge in horror, made the only rational choice. "All ships, cease fire. We surrender. Power down weapons immediately." The battle ended. Space filled with debris and rescue pods and damaged ships limping toward safe harbor. Thomas collapsed into his command chair, suddenly feeling every one of his years. 23,000 dead across both fleets. Dozens of ships destroyed. But Earth remained safe. 1 month later, Captain William Cross stood in the Concordat Council chamber wearing a new uniform. The Council had created a joint military force combining human tactics with Concordat technology, and William had been chosen to command it. His shoulder had healed, but he still favored it slightly when he moved. "Your defense of Kepler 442b showed us something we had forgotten," the Council speaker said. "That survival requires not just intelligence but determination. The will to fight with whatever tools exist. You will train others in these principles." After the ceremony, Telina approached William privately. "The galaxy is changing because of humanity. Other species are studying your tactics now. Not to copy them, most can't survive your training, but to understand the philosophy. You've reminded us that peace must sometimes be defended." On Kepler 442b, the rebuilt colony thrived. Children played in the streets, looking up at stars now protected by a combined fleet. Jennifer Cole supervised reconstruction while her young daughter asked endless questions about the war. "Mom, did you really fight aliens with mining lasers?" Jennifer smiled and ruffled her daughter's hair. "We fought with everything we had. That's what humans do. We adapt. We survive. We protect what's ours." Aboard Defiance, now flagship of the joint human Concordat fleet, Admiral Thomas Reed reviewed intelligence reports. The Vrexian Empire had fractured into peaceful successor states. 17 new species had applied for Concordat membership, feeling safer knowing Deathworlders helped guard the borders. Henry Shaw entered with new orders. "Admiral, multiple species are requesting joint patrol missions. They want human crews aboard their ships. They figure if Deathworlders are on their side, nobody will dare attack them." Thomas looked out at Earth through the viewport, beautiful and blue and deadly in equal measure. Humanity had reached the stars and found a galaxy that had forgotten how to fight. They'd reminded them at a terrible cost, that civilization sometimes required defenders willing to bring hellfire when necessary. The galaxy was peaceful for centuries, Thomas said quietly. We reminded them that peace must be defended. Sometimes with diplomacy and wisdom. Sometimes with weapons and courage. Make sure they remember both lessons. He smiled slightly. Now let's show them what Deathworlders can do when we're working with them instead of against them. The stars waited and humanity was ready.